Vishwa Shanti Darshan congratulates the winners of 19th Bharat Asmita National Award 2023 presented by the MIT World Peace University. MIT विश्व शांति विश्वविद्यालय, भारत अस्मिता फाउंडेशन और MIT स्कूल ऑफ गवर्नमेंट द्वारा भारत अस्मिता राष्ट्रीय पुरस्कार 2023 के समारोह में MIT वर्ल्ड पीस यूनिवर्सिटी के संस्थापक अध्यक्ष प्रोफेसर डॉक्टर विश्वनाथ दा कराड समारोह के अध्यक्ष स्थान पर थे। इस अवसर पर MIT वर्ल्ड पीस यूनिवर्सिटी के कार्यकारी अध्यक्ष तथा भारत अस्मिता राष्ट्रीय पुरस्कार समिति के संयोजक राहुल विश्वनाथ कराड, कुलपति डॉक्टर RM चिटनिस और प्रो वाइस चांसलर डॉक्टर सपन पांडा उपस्थित थे। माता एक प्रकृति निर्मित संगठन है। भारत के आर्थिक विकास और राष्ट्र निर्माण में महिलाओं की बहुत बड़ी भागीदारी है। भारतीय संस्कृति महिलाओं का सम्मान करती है। रोथस्चाइल्ड इंडिया की अध्यक्षा पद्मश्री नैना लाल किडवाई को भारत अस्मिता लाइफ अवार्ड से सम्मानित किया गया। पद्मश्री नैना लाल किडवाई ने कहा,
What is courageous leadership? And I would like to believe that every one of you out there is a leader in your own right. And the difference between being a leader and a courageous leader has to be the purpose to succeed beyond just work. I believe it comes with the desire to serve, to do the right thing, to stand up for the right thing. It's interesting how in one's journey, one finds these other causes. I spent 35 years in the world of banking, but about halfway through my career, and while in banking, I served on many committees, building institutions in the country, looking at ways to strengthen the institutions that represented regulation in particular in fields in which I worked. However, mid-career, I found the space of water and sanitation, and you would wonder why as a banker I moved into toilets and all kinds of shitty things, but it was a calling. And in this field, Dr. Mashelkar has been such a strong guiding hand. He has headed our juries where we give out awards. He has guided me in the work of the NGO my late husband and I founded, which works in this space. And then again, in areas to do with women empowerment and microfinance and livelihood, this was a little more connected to my work in banking. But through my work in aiding microfinance institutions, the brilliant work that Pramila ji does, and we have this as a movement in the country, enabled me to understand a lot more beyond what I was doing, but also to help in terms of directing some of that funding in the right space. So what I'm really saying here is that no matter what we do, we can touch many lives in many ways by doing what we do well, but also by having that lateral vision to look at the areas that we can enter and address with the skills we have. And I had little knowledge of these spaces, but because of the courage and the desire to do something which mattered beyond my work. I think a second area that defines courageous leadership is humanity and the EQ, the emotional quotient that enables us to connect with people. And I think in this electronic era, I think many have mentioned it from the dais today, the ability to continue that human contact. And I think Professor Archana Shukla was just so right in reminding us about how important it is to connect, to learn, to listen, and not be absorbed in what we want to see in terms of the next WhatsApp. Collaboration, team play, no better example of that than our Mars mission. She talked about how they stood equally, men and women. They stood as a team and they survived as a team over those months. And the tension of getting that end objective. We are never in a position to do everything ourselves. We're only as good as the team we build around us, the team we have around us. And then as a team, to play to win. Now this becomes important because it's not about killing your competition, but rather to continue to better oneself. You compete against yourself, you play to win by improving yourself. And you know that every battle is first won in your mind, that desire to win. And you don't lose a game you played if your team couldn't play with you. And you step in to do the heavy lifting. It's not just left to others to take the knocks. And that you could win the game with any team you had. So it's not about complaining and sacking people. It is about finding the true potential in everyone around us. And that as a captain, as a leader, each player raised his or her game beyond their own limitations. So that we have to rise beyond that glass ceiling we think we have or see. But in fact, when you bump up against that glass ceiling, you find that it wasn't there at all. You can actually go right through it, and it was really more in your own mind. Now, success is not a life free of pitfalls and free of falls. Success is about learning to walk over those mistakes. We celebrated our successes today, but believe me, every one of us could have stood here for hours telling you about the failures that we encountered. And it is the ability to learn from these failures and to rise above these failures to move ahead. And I found a lovely way of putting it, which is the law of wasted effort. Do you know, and I will draw on my love of nature and things in the wild to tell you this, but do you know that lions only succeed in a quarter of their hunting attempts, which means they fail 75% of the time. Imagine if they stopped because they failed. But they know they have to keep hunting to feed themselves and their young. They don't despair in their pursuit. The main reason for this is not just hunger, as some might think, but it's also the understanding of the law of wasted efforts. This has been instinctively built into animals. It's a law in which nature is governed. It seems to be something which we as human beings forget because we punish failure. We revel in others' failure rather than see it as a stepping stone to success. Half of the eggs of fishes are eaten. Half of the baby bears die before puberty. Most of the world's rain falls in oceans. Most of the seeds of trees are eaten by birds. And yet they survive. So scientists have found that animals, trees, other forces of nature are more receptive to the law of wasted effort than we are. So only humans think that the lack of success in a few attempts is failure. So I say this with all respect to the teachers amongst you, the parents amongst you, and to each one of us who feels down and depressed when we don't get where we want. Because at the end of the day, it is about failing, picking oneself up, and then moving ahead. I would just add that in a book I put together, 30 women CEOs, their voices, their stories, our support networks was something which came up very strongly with each one. The choice of partner, the husband. I was very fortunate to have in my late husband much more than a husband, a friend, a mentor, a guide. He showed me how to engage with the not-for-profit community because he worked in it. Parents, every one of you teachers here, you are a force in every one of your students' lives. The mother-in-law who steps in to look after the family, and yes, it's a great institution, the institution of mothers-in-law. So don't forget it. the neighbors, the friends, the colleagues, all of whom I owe a big thank you for making my journey so wonderful and indeed worthwhile. So I'll end with some borrowed words of wisdom. We are here in a temple of learning, and who other than Swami Vivekananda to draw on? And he talks of the power of association, and he explains this so beautifully. He says, a rain drops from the sky. If it is caught by clean hands, it is pure enough for drinking. If it falls in the gutter, its value drops so much that it can't be used even to wash your feet. If it falls on a hot surface, it evaporates. If it falls on a leaf, it shines like a pearl. And finally, if it falls in an oyster, it becomes a pearl. So, if existence and worth depends on whom and what it is associated with, let us be associated with people who are good at heart, who help us experience our inner transformation. And can we be the medium that helps that drop of water become a pearl? So with that, our journeys continue, and I hope that for every one of you here, we will be here celebrating your new and other successes every decade.